I gotta I gotta tell you that story too. I'll tell you later. But hey, first of all, we are here with Corey Douglas. You know, Corey is a colleague of mine, so this is going to be fun. He is
Most certainly
VP
will.
of What's that?
I said it most certainly will be.
Yeah. He's a VP of business development, like I am at Repario. But the one thing I'll have to point out is Corey is also a lawyer. It's JD, and he is a shareholder at Repario. So, woohoo, Repario! Let's go, baby. Let's kick it off. So, Corey, thank you for docketing with us at the Sales Docket. I'm glad you finally got a chance. And when I reached out to you, you were like, "All right, man, you made my day." So I'm glad that you have
Yeah.
watched our podcast and find value in it. And I think that those who watch this podcast today will find extreme value in what you're going to bring to the table. And it's interesting enough to say that I actually prepared some questions for Corey that I will be reading because I want to make sure I'm on point. For Corey's a rock star within Repario, and I think there's a lot that people will be able to learn from him. It's such a young man being a shareholder in a business and killing it at Repario. So, Corey, welcome. Thank you for being a part, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you guys inviting me on. And I got to toot your horn, man. You've had some great months lately, and you're going to get that Quarter Buster award. It looks like you're going to seat me. I was the two-time Quarter Buster award winner past couple of years, but it looks like Tim's going to thwart my three-peat. So.
Well, hey, listen.
Yeah, congrats, man.
Hey, Corey, don't worry about it. He's done that to me plenty of times in my career. So.
Well, to start it off, generally, Corey, what we like to do is just have you give us a little background about yourself. I know you're part of ASADS, and like I said, you're a shareholder at Repario, but tell us a little bit about how you got into the business and what brought you to this point right now.
Yeah. So I started out working in kind of supportive roles in law firms in Orlando, and worked my way around a couple of law firms in Orlando, some big firms there, practicing or not practicing, but supporting the practice of attorneys in various areas of law. So I got a chance to see some different areas of law: personal injury, commercial litigation, medical malpractice, a number of things. So that really kind of sparked me wanting to go to law school, which I ended up doing. But while I was in law school, I was working for a small e-discovery company, and there in Orlando, and doing sales work. And really just grew to love it. It was an opportunity to every day I had a chance to talk to attorneys of all different stripes and all different practice areas. And we were mainly focused on forensics. So I got to learn forensics in the beginning of my career. And then once I got out of law school, I was about 6 years into doing sales. So I said, the idea was go to law school and end up being a discovery attorney at a firm. But I said, I really love what I'm doing right now. I'm making great money at it. And it's interesting. So I decided to stay in sales and continue down that path. And that's, led me through a couple of acquisitions. So I've been a part of some companies that got acquired. And I was originally with a company that so got sold off and acquired, and that turned into another opportunity to go to advanced discovery, and that got acquired by Consilio. And then I went back to the Elijah, which was my first job in e-discovery. And Elijah, back 3 years ago, merged with 5 other companies to form Repario. So here we are today. I've been with Repario now for 3 years. Like you said, I'm a shareholder in the company, which is great, which feels like an accomplishment in and of itself, because as salespeople, I think we always feel like we do a lot for the company that we work for, but maybe aren't fairly compensated. So being a shareholder has been great, and looking forward to many more years with Repario and some of the exciting things that we got going on here.
Cool. And I want to
Frank?
touch more on that
Yeah.
shareholder thing a little bit later, but Rap, go ahead. I'll let you because I got a bunch of
So
questions
Corey,
for.
yeah. So how'd you actually end up in that e-discovery company? So Elijah was the first company you were at.
Yeah,
How'd you find them, or how did they find you? How did that work
well,
out?
I found them. I was working at I was working as a support staff at Holland Knight in Orlando, and I was working for one of the litigation partners. I've been there about 2 years, and just one day, they said, "Hey," called me in half day. They let me work 4 hours, and they called me in at lunchtime and said, "Hey, unfortunately." You're a part of some layoffs that we're doing today. No hard feelings. Here's a severance package. But this is your last day. So I took the severance package. It was a great experience working at Holland Knight. Um, sat on that severance package for a little bit, for a couple of months, and I said, hey, I got to get back in the game here. And I don't know if you guys remember Craigslist back in the day, but this was 2013. I was looking on Craigslist for jobs, and I came across this company called Elijah. I was like, what the hell's Elijah? Um, and went to the website, looked at it a little bit more, and they were looking for an e-discovery analyst. I knew nothing about e-discovery other than that, I used to see the old Icon guys pushing boxes around to come get the paper documents, and I knew a little bit about e-discovery, not a lot. But before the interview, I just decided to kind of read up a little bit more and essentially fake it till I made it, and went to lunch with this guy Chris Newton, who actually ended up being my boss and hiring me. But yeah, went to lunch with him. He said, hey, after the lunch was over, he was like, I was supposed to interview 3 other people, but I really like you. You want to come to work with me here at Elijah? So that was my first job in e-discovery. And like I said, Elijah was focused a lot on forensics. So the owner of the company, Andy Reisman, at the time, he wanted everybody in the company. There was only like 12 or 13 of us. We were a small organization, but he wanted everybody, regardless of your role, to be able to do collections. So they taught me how to use some of the equipment, do collections. In fact, I actually went out and did collections here in Florida. So that's kind of my first step in the industry was actually on the forensic side, really.
Rap, do you want me to go or?
Yeah, go for it.
So you touch on something that I'm big on, and that's kind of ownership or having a side hustle. And 2 podcasts ago, I think we had Rap's daughter on, and I said to them, plainly, like, what's your side hustle? What are you going to do? Talk to me a little bit about how you saw the fact to become a shareholder from being an employee, because I think a lot of the young salespeople don't think in that way, don't think of a side hustle, don't think of ownership, equity, things of that nature. So what drove you to be a part of that? Hey, I want a piece of this pie, and I want a piece of this pie early.
Yeah, like I said, I'd been through a couple of mergers. When I left when I left Elijah the first time, Elijah was the company itself was split up. I didn't get a chance to be a part of that.
Hmm.
That kind of put a taste in my mouth. Well, hey, we're a small company here, 12 people. I was a significant part of helping to build that business, and
Right.
not taking anything away from what had been done, the years previous before I got there. But it would have been nice to get a little something there. So I thought to myself, hey, if there's ever an opportunity to have some equity, it's certainly something I want to work towards. So then when I left there, went to Advanced Discovery, didn't have an opportunity to be a part of that when Advanced was acquired by Consilio.
Right.
Obviously, that was a big deal then. And then, while at Consilio, they acquired Discover Ready. Wasn't an opportunity for me to be a part of that acquisition process there. So, over the course of my career and being a part of these acquisitions and knowing that there were some people within the organization that did have equity and did have a chance to, reap some of those benefits when those sales came, it really became a goal of mine. So, when I left Consilio in 2020, went back to Elijah. I was with Elijah for 3 years up until the merger with Repario. And when the owner of Elijah, Andy Reisman, came to me and said, "Hey, you know, you're the kind of the first employee I'm telling about this, but I've decided to sell the company, and we're going to be merging with some other organizations to form a larger company." And I said, "You know, Andy, that's great, but one of the things I would really want you to push for us is that we get equity, is that we get an opportunity to have a piece of this." Because I knew it was going to be something special. I knew that this formation of 6 companies was going to be special, and I want to be a part of it. So I think Andy really pushed for it, and that was something that helped. You know, our private equity backer, you know, then opened it up once we formed Repario about a year into the organization. Our private equity backer, who's been great, you know, gave everyone an opportunity to buy in to the organization. So you know, you had a range of shares that you could buy and a range of money, you know, you could buy in at. And I said, "Hell, you know, this is yeah, this is the opportunity that I wanted." So of course I was going to be a part of it, and I put money in, and you know, and that was a great decision, because now, you know, I've got some skin in the game. You know, there's a lot of exciting things happening at Repario, so I feel good about that decision to you know, buy in.
Yeah, Corey, I think that's such a good story to tell. The future of reps, and part of it's interesting because the first equity I ever got was in Clearwell, and when I was killing it, I got more equity. And then when the company got sold, and you see the small percentage of people who truly make a lot of money, you learn your lesson pretty quickly on what to ask for next. But I do think for especially younger salespeople, that it's directly focused on the impact you have on the organization. And again, it goes back to what Tim, we've talked a lot on the sales docket is, you know, working harder than the rest, getting the results, all of that at some stage allows you to ask for the equity, right? It's not something assumed, but it's something that has to be worked for and asked for. And I think you're a prime example of that, right? You had an impact, you understood what equity was, you've seen the benefit of it, and then you pushed for it. And I think that's a really, really important lesson for the younger folks. And trust me, I talk to my kids all the time. I'm like, before you sign that employment agreement, what's the equity? Are you getting equity? Are there any, you know, can you hit a certain sales goal and get more equity? Like you fighting for equity as a young salesperson there's a lot, and I've seen it, right? It's like, I don't know if I deserve that yet. And the question is, if you're going to impact the organization like you probably will, then if you don't do it from the beginning, at least set up in the negotiation some kind of parameter that says, if I hit X, Y, and Z, I'm going to get percentage of equity or whatever the case is. And I think that's an important negotiating trait when you're looking at a job. And I feel younger people don't feel the right to ask. They'll feel weird about asking. But I think we all know what equity can do for you, right? At the end of the day, that's the retirement fund. I mean, that's where you make your true money. So it's great point.
Yeah, I think it's important to know.
That was my great point.
That was a great point.
yeah.
But you're right, because you know what,
that was a great point, Steve.
It's important to know that if you're gonna work your tail off to have, you know, to help an organization be successful, that you're gonna be rewarded for that work. And that work doesn't always come in the form of a salary, you know. And especially when, you know, we got an organization like ours where we're bringing in millions of dollars, you know, so being able to share in the rewards and the revenue and the eventual sale is definitely important, and that's something that everybody should work towards if you're in our position.
Yeah.
Yeah, and fight for it. I mean, and fight for it, because you have, you know, young salespeople go through yearly reviews, and if you're hitting your numbers and blowing it out and being a big impact, you have that right to ask. And I think that's a really important piece. But sorry, Timmy, go ahead.
No. I think, you know, we've touched on this, and it's solid. I think this is huge to make sure that the younger sales generation understands that, you know, God knows, Rapp, if we would have, you know, did this back in the day when we were at Icon and what we were doing, but you live and learn. So Corey, let me switch gears a little bit, and the focus of the sales docket is always about the younger generation and what we can, help them with. So if you were speaking directly to, a 20-year-old sales professional in this industry, what is the single most important sales skill that they should start developing today?
Networking skills. Absolutely. Get out and be a part of organizations. Go to anything and everything that you can that might be even closely related to what you're doing. I think we're all old enough to remember a time before Zoom meetings,
Right.
or before, virtual meetings and virtual conferences. Like, when I first started out, even, it wasn't that long ago, 13 years ago, when I first started out in 2013 working at Elijah, I would leave the office in Elijah, and I would know that there were a couple of bars in Orlando where all the lawyers went and hung out at 5 o'clock to go have drinks. And that's what I did. I would go hang out at those bars, and I would hang out at those restaurants where people were congregating at after work, and just meet people. And for me, I learned, very early on, I was a people person. I like people. I like being in rooms. I like talking to people. I like going to conferences. I like going to CLEs. And that's how I was going to be successful. And it was building relationships. And I don't think you can do that, virtually.
On Zoom. Yeah.
So I would say, the number one thing is if you're a young salesperson right now, get out there, make sure you're at every CLE you can in town, especially, we talk about, low hanging fruit and just, fishing in your pond. Like, there's, if you're in whatever area you're in, make sure you're involved in everything that's in that area. Every kind of conference that's coming in that area, every CLE, every time a law firm's having a program at their law firm, go to that. So networking skills, number one thing.
Love that.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right, I got a question for you, Cor. So it's interesting because in my day, I've hired attorneys thinking that they would bring kind of this equal stature when they're out and selling. And typically, attorneys are not necessarily good salespeople. But when you look back at your career, was there a sales mistake or something that you did early on that kind of changed the trajectory of your career? And if you can look back on that, is there anything that you sat there and said, "Oh, I really screwed this up, but my God, that lesson I learned and I implement that every single day going forward"?
Yeah, I like to think I'm relentless about following up. And that's because I've had a couple of opportunities that slipped through my hands because I didn't follow up. And I was not timely about getting back in front of the client, or making sure the client knew that I had a solution for their problem, and they went with someone else. And I'm talking about some big cases that went early on for me would have been huge. But I missed out on them because I made the initial connection, started the process of getting in front of the client, trying to let them know that, hey, we had a solution for their issue, for their problem, but not being relentless about the follow-up, and not being relentless about staying on top of that initial conversation, and letting them know that, hey, I'm still here, because as their problem accelerated, my communication dissipated. Like I wasn't top of mind to them. So as their problem accelerated over time, and it ramped up, they had conversations with other providers, and those other providers were more top of mind. So I ended up losing those projects. So for me, now I'm always relentless about following up. And I'm always
define that, because I always tell people I'm really not a pushy salesperson, but I am persistent, right? But
Yeah.
what is
Exactly.
that? So what does that mean for you? So relentless is what? Because it is a fine balance between annoying the crap out of someone and calling them every day. And I've had some managers, end a quarter, be like, you need to call your person every single day. And I'm like, that's not, no. But
No,
so
no,
what does that look like? What is relentless in your eyes? What does that mean for I'm a 20-year-old sales rep listening to this going, oh, what does relentless mean?
well, relentless means you got to have a process. You got to have
Okay.
a process in place. You got to know that, hey, obviously calling somebody or emailing somebody every day is a bit much. Nobody wants that. That gets annoying, but you got to understand that. But you also got to have a certain cadence about what you're doing. And when
Absolutely.
I'm saying when I'm relentless, it means that I got a process in place, I got a cadence, and I follow that. Relentless. You know.
You know
So
you know what I do? I say,
Annoy the
listen, I
shit
could
out
be
of
the
people.
pushiest.
Just
That's
annoy
for
people.
sure. But Corey, it's interesting you say that because I literally ask people, like I do, if there's an opportunity, I'm like, look, I really don't want to be that pushy salesperson, but I am very persistent. How often can I follow up with you? Like, it's such a simple little question.
It
And
is.
that people sit there and go, yeah, you can follow up with me once a week or follow up with, they'll let you know what they want. And if you follow that, it's a different story
yeah,
than,
Well,
go ahead, Timmy.
and it's important how you say that, because if you ask someone and it ever becomes an issue, I'm just doing what you told me to do, right? So if someone's
yeah,
like, why do you keep calling? Like, well,
yeah,
we spoke earlier. You said I can call you every week. If you want me to call you every other week or every month, I'll
yeah.
do that too. So I'm doing what you told me to do. So that's an easy out. So I think that's something really interesting
That's great.
to talk about. And you bring up a key word, is a cadence, right? Have a plan, follow your cadence, because I do it. I have little reminders and kickers to get back in front of clients for particular deals. It might be on a monthly, quarterly basis. But the one thing I did want to
You
bring
still
up,
writing those on the post-it notes, Timmy? Is that how you done?
absolutely, I still got notes. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So the other thing is that we talk about relationships. We're talking about forming these bonds and relationships. There's clients that I talk to weekly just about stuff, not about
Yeah,
business, about,
yeah,
and I think when you get to that point, and obviously I've been doing, Rapp and I've been doing this a long time, where we have clients who are friends, but there's some particular clients, one, because of a common bond, whether it's golf or our children or, things that we like, we talk about other stuff. And then when we
yeah,
talk about, hey man, just called to find out what's going on, or hey, how you doing? It's like, oh, hey, I got this thing for you. So I
yeah.
think if you get
Exactly.
along those lines of having these relationships, like you said, being in front of people, forming these bonds over years, what'll start to happen is you're just going to have relationships and people go, hey man, I had, when I called one of my clients, he's like, "Are you still working at Repario?" I said, "Yeah." He's like,
Yeah,
"Well, because before I was going to send this job, I wanted to make sure it was going to you." Like, that's the kind of relation that, now, granted, I've been doing this 30 years, so that
yeah.
kind of falls in line. But for some of the younger people, if you form those relationships, that starts to happen. Go ahead, Rap. I'm sorry, I just kind of went off on a
No,
tangent.
no, no.
And on that point too, I think along with being able to network, um, it's having a personality too. I mean, let's be honest, because I see a lot of young people that when I go to some of these events, and they're all on their phone, and so I think having a personality, being okay with yourself in a room goes a long way, to being able to form those relationships. And then, like you said, I've got clients that over the years they become friends now,
Yeah.
and I've got a nice group of folks down here in South Florida. They're my friends, but before that they were clients. But I
Hmm.
can go out, I can have a drink with them, I can go to dinner with them, I can go out on a boat, whatever, and we not talk about anything related to work.
Hmm.
So I think that really goes a long way with building relationships. Is that understanding that if you see these people time and time again, you're going to form trust, you're going to form friendships, and hopefully that's going to not only enrich your life from a personal perspective, but enrich you from a business perspective, because those people are going to call on you first when they have a project, or they need help in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Corey, I had a question for you, and I think it's really based on what you mentioned earlier. Is that Andy made you become a forensics person, right? Like he wanted you to roll up your sleeves and understand what forensics means today, right?
Yeah.
Our industry is evolving at a speed that we haven't seen before, from a technical aspect, right? For younger folks, right? Like if you had a mentor, I don't know if you guys do that at Repario, but if you have, a salesperson coming on your team, how how important is that attribute today for them to kind of roll up their sleeves and get into the technology? Or is it more of a focus of go out and build your network and relationships? Like where's the balance between both of those?
I think you've got to do a little bit of both. I think you've got to learn the technology to the point where you can at least be competent in speaking to a client about, whatever solutions, you're trying to offer them. Um, and I don't think clients necessarily expect salespeople to be experts, you know. That's why
Agreed.
that's why we have a whole team of people that back us up of SMEs that are, whether it be forensics or doc review or project management, whatever. So I think being able to know just enough to be competent and to have an intelligent conversation with the client, but also being able to say to that client, hey, I don't know the answer to this, but I've got a great team of people that do.
Mhm.
That somebody on my team knows the answer to your question or knows how we can solve this problem. Let me introduce you to them. Let's set up a call with them. Let's have a deeper discussion or conversation. So I think you got to know both. You got to know, if you're out there selling relativity and Everlaw, you got to at least know how these products work at on a base level, right? No, maybe not. Maybe not if you're Tim.
I
um,
know.
but
Processing?
a client's not gonna expect you to be an
Rella,
expert,
what?
right? You're
Ever
still
who?
talking. You're still talking some.
Did you say
right?
hot air balloon, Ryan? Guy, sorry.
Sorry,
Um,
Corey.
No. But yeah, I think you got
That's
to
a good
know.
point.
You got to know a little bit. But then also too, you've got to be able to get out there and you got to be able to network and you got to be able to, to grow your book. I don't think there's anybody who's been tremendously successful with cold calling. So, just sitting behind a phone and picking up the phone and calling people. Yeah, that's a part of what we do. But as you get, as you mature in this industry, that's probably less and less of what you do because you're working off of the relationships that you've built over the years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a
Yeah.
nice balance between both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So-
I'm going to ask one more. I'm going to ask one more quick question, just because we're on the South Florida. We're kind of South Florida brothers down there. But
Yeah.
you're the
Can't stay in
president of
your lane,
ASET
can
South
you?
Florida.
You can never stay in
No,
your lane.
cannot.
Back and forth,
I'm
Corey.
going to
It's
shut up
supposed to
after.
go. Last question he asks,
I know.
he never stays in his lane.
But I'm going to.
Go
I
ahead.
promise I'm shutting up after this. So
I doubt it.
So he's not wrong, Corey. He's not wrong. President of ASET South Florida. Kind of that group got picked up again. You're the president. From an impact for just ASEDs in general or joining an organization like that. How is that for the younger generation? Like, tell us your experience on that. How'd you get involved with that? What is the impact that you guys are trying to bring to the community? Give us a little pitch on that, because I think it's an important piece kind of your journey also.
Yeah, ASETS is a great organization. I first learned about ASETS right when I got in the industry back in 2013. And I think the ASETS test had just come out, I think in 2014. I was one of the first people to take it. So I got my ASET certification way back in 2014. And I've been a big proponent of the organization. Steve, you probably remember back first couple of years of the organization, they had a conference down here in South
That's right.
Florida at the
That's right.
Diplomat in Hollywood, and it was a great conference. It was one of the first conferences that I went to, and then they had one up in New York. one year, like 2016 or something around there. But the organization itself is a global organization. It's an organization of e-discovery professionals, but it's expanded beyond kind of e-discovery. And I think you don't necessarily have to have a background in e-discovery to be a part of the organization. It's really more about bringing legal professionals together under kind of the banner of learning legal technology and being a part of that industry. So yeah, it's we've had an opportunity to put on a couple of events down here in South Florida that have gone really well. The relaunch of the South Florida chapter, you've been a tremendous help in those two events. And yeah, I would just say to anybody who wants to be a part of this professional community of legal technology, there's a lot of organizations you could join. There's Women in E-Discovery. There's your various bar associations. But ACEDS is a true global organization. They've got chapters everywhere. And they do a lot of work with a lot of other organizations. They're a well-known organization. And plus, there's a real educational component to ACEDS as well, too. So if you're just a young person getting into this industry, the ACEDS certification is great to have. It's going to be a value add on a resume or going into an interview. Getting just having that community around you. There's a number of resources. There's a lot of ACEDS people throughout the country, so you're going to have a community to fall back on if you're a part of the ACEDS organization. So yeah, I think it's just a great organization all around, and looking forward to working with you more on the South Florida chapter and doing some things here, and the national chapter or the national organization as a whole, for a long time to come, because like I said, I've been a big proponent since they've been around for the past 12, 13 years, whatever it is.
Cool. So
Great.
I'm gonna throw a question at you, and you sort of answered it, and then we can probably get you out of here, Corey, with the final question. Then I'll let Rapp speak again and ask, our closing question. But you kind of mentioned about initially getting out there, relationships, things of that nature. Don't use those answers. What is the one sales principle you believe will never go out of style outside of getting out there and building relationships? What other thing would you offer a younger salespeople that is a sales principle that you don't believe will go out of style, no matter what?
Grit, hard work. I'm going to be honest. I learned very early on that I wanted certain things. And sales was a great way to accomplish that, because in at least our industry, we're most of us are working off a salary plus commission. So the more you work, the more you bring in, the more you can make. So I very early on, I didn't hustle as much as I should have. But then when I started seeing other guys talk about how much they were making, I'm like, well, damn, it's not that hard, really. I just got to hustle more. I just got to bring in more clients. I got to bring in more revenue, and that I'm going to see more money. So, once you realize, hey, you don't have to sit on that X salary. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a simple formula, right? I mean, it really is. It's just funny when I don't see people who aren't working. I mean, you set whatever goal you want. The harder you work, the more you make. I mean, that's just doesn't come from good looks. Like,
I reached
I don't know if I agree with that either.
Well, Timmy's always off of good looks, right? But no, I reached a revenue goal a couple of years ago, and I said I'm never going under that. So
that's awesome.
That was a number I had never hit before, and I said, look, that's a great number, but I want to do more. But I'm definitely not doing any less than that.
You set the bar.
So so I just think you gotta if you're not willing to get out there and really like hustle, sales is not something that you're gonna reap benefit from. Right. Not saying that you can't go out and do something else that you might be better at, but you got to know that sales is something that, and you got to know that, when you get into a sales position, your organization is going to be on your butt. They are going to be on you to make revenue. You're not there to, they're not hiring you to farm. You're going to be a hunter. Most organizations want hunters. They don't want farmers,
Yeah.
and the only way that you can build your revenue and build your book and do things that you want to do in life is if you make that money. So you got to get out there, you got to work, you got to be out there, you got to hunt, and you got to have grit, because you're going to hear a lot of no's. You're going to hear a lot of Repario who. You're going to hear a lot of rejection, but you got to have grit. So aside from the networking and that, just like grit, you just gotta get up every day and have a goal and say, hey, I'm gonna make this happen.
Yeah,
I love that.
Rapp, like I said, I'll let you finish with the last question. But it's funny doing this podcast. We kind of hear a lot of the same things, right? Hard work, grit, building relationships, being out there. I mean, Corey touched on all of those things, and that's why he remains successful. It's interesting that the same conversation kind of comes over, just in different ways. So, but go
Yeah.
ahead, Rapp, if you want to kind of wrap things up.
Yeah,
No
and I
pun
also think
intended. Wrap things
I think
up.
Yeah.
I'll finish it up, but I think Corey, one of the other things, grit is not. I don't think grit is enough. I think goals are hand in hand with grit, right? And I think you just mentioned it, right? You had a goal and you used your grit to get to that goal. I remember Tim and I had the same manager back in the day who would sit down and be like, what's your goal? Like, what's your goal from this job? I mean, okay, if you get money, what do you want to buy? And then
Yeah.
get a picture of that and pin it up next to your, cubby hole or whatever it is, and look at that every day and understand that grit plus a goal actually gets to what you want. And I think it's a combination of those two. So I just wanted to put those 2 cents in. So last question. Appreciate you being on. You can't even imagine. Last question is, was there something in your entire sales career that was like a pivot moment for you that changed the trajectory of your entire career? If there was a moment, something that you sat there and said, but maybe it was becoming a share. Something in that your career that you sat there and were like, holy cow, this has changed the way I look at things. Did I ask that right, Timmy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, or prior to, like, you were working at a law firm. What, and not to speak for you, but was the pivot, getting laid off? Like what was it?
Yeah.
Could have been. It could
One
be
door closes,
anything.
another opens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be anything that made you change.
Yeah. I think it was really when I got to when I got to Consilio,
Okay.
and I started working with just some titans of the sales industry, man. It was, I had no idea the numbers that some guys are doing
Right.
out there. So hearing that guys were doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 90 million a year,
Mm-hmm.
that was eye-opening for me. And that was when it turned, a switch turned on. I was like, wow, this I can really do something great here in this industry. And maybe I don't get to 90 million a year, but just getting to a certain point every year, you kind of push yourself more and more. So that was kind of the turning point when I realized that there were guys that were making, men and women that were making millions and millions of dollars for their organizations, but more importantly, we're working with these great companies. And
Mhm.
that was what was really like exciting for me to say, hey, my client is XYZ, or my client is that, or some of these really recognizable brands out there in the world. So that was the turning point where I said, hey, this is a career that I really enjoy. I can be very successful at it. I can put my head down and just work hard, and hopefully that grit, my goals, all of that will will come to fruition, and all of that will I'll reap the benefits of all that hard work. So yeah, I was just realizing the possibilities that were out there in the industry. It was kind of that turning point for me.
All right. Well, before we let you go real quick, I'm going to tell that story that I was going to tell you about the hair, right? So Corey has to realize that I'm a little jealous of his fro, because I actually used to have that years ago. But the way it worked is, Corey, I had the whole thing, it was, I didn't really comb it. It was curly, the whole deal. And I used to cut my own hair. Before I was bald, I used to cut my own hair and fade it up. And I'm sitting on the couch one day, and my daughter walks up to me and goes, "Hey, Dad, you have a hole in your head." And I'm like, "What?" I literally go to the bathroom, and I had all of this hair around, and I had a bald spot that I never noticed, because I really never went to the point where I would cut the top off. That day, I took the clippers and everything came off. So that's my Corey Douglas story, and hopefully that doesn't happen.
I haven't gotten there yet. I'm still working on trying to keep every little bit I got back here, regardless of how much it's thinning. And I'm doing everything possible, man. Everything under the sun. You name a treatment, and I've tried. So
it looks
all right,
good,
Corey.
brother.
Hey, really appreciate your time. This has been great, and great story, and definitely appreciate it. Have a great.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah,
I'm going to stop recording.
Appreciate it, guys. All right. Bye.
You don't have to leave. Yeah.